Well, hello everybody. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever in the beautiful world you are. Welcome back to Solutions with Aquarius Rising Africa. And yes, we've had a little bit of a break time. I was off last week and I am delighted to see beautiful Andy Bond again. Also, spoke to you a couple of weeks ago. So I am so happy that you're back. Welcome, beautiful. How are you?
Thank you. I'm very honored to be back. Thank you, Chantelle. I'm doing well, just kind of hanging in there with all of these crazy things that we're going through as a civilization and as humanity. So I'm doing my best to navigate that, but
That's for sure. We were just having a little off-air chat before, and we were just talking about the things happening in the background of both our lives at the moment, and not just us. This past week seems to have really brought up a lot of stuff for people to deal with, you know.
Mhm.
So I like to be challenged now and again. I'm certainly being challenged right now, but it's a
Mhm.
beautiful thing. I do believe it's here to make us stronger, expand our wingspan, so to speak, and just enjoy
Mhm.
life. Because as we know, we are in the hopscotch here. There's the hop, skip, and jump going on all over right now, right? So, but that's why it's
Absolutely.
just so amazing and beautiful to have people like you in my life, even though you are far. You're very
Mhm.
near.
Mhm.
And I'm loving our conversations as well. So, yeah, in the past couple of weeks, we were speaking about the Eastern teachings, the infiltration of the Eastern teachings. We can maybe even expand on that if we have time or information or whatever. We will get into that because we know that Christianity has been the main infiltrator actually, and has also been obviously infiltrated the heaviest, I think, of all the religions. And all the denominations have been infiltrated. So we're looking
Mhm.
at the Dalai Lama, we're looking at Sadhguru. Those are the two well-known ones that I know of. Apparently, Gandhi was
Mhm.
also uh, not quite kosher. I don't even know what to call it. But
Yeah.
anyway, it's just lovely to have you, Andy. So today we're going to be talking about Sanskrit. I mean,
Mhm.
I know I've always called it the holy language and the sacred
Mhm.
language, but it's not a language as you're going to explain to us. I've just had such a good time listening to some of your stuff on that. It is just resonating second to none. And then also we're going to talk about just an introduction to the Vedic teachings. So I'm really looking forward to that. So
Mhm.
enough babbling from me. Over to you, beautiful woman. And how's it been? Are you good? I mean, is there anything you want to tell us, share with us before you get going?
Um, I things are good, like I said, it seems in the past week or so, across so many things, people that I've talked to, clients, students, um, just friends, family. There's been a lot of things that have come out of left field for people, and it's bringing up. I mean, even in my own personal experience, it's bringing a lot from the past, that's sort of unresolved. And so I do see that happening just everywhere around. And it seems to me, at least in my experience, what it's the sort of effect that we're going through, or that I've been going through and witnessing others go through, is that any unhealed wounds or trauma from almost the last 20 years or so seem to be, if it's still in there in your body and your mind and your soul and your spirit, it's
So
coming to the surface. And so it's been
I'm loving it. I'm loving what you're saying because it's so true. I was actually listening to a podcast not too long ago where this is exactly what they were talking about. And at that stage, I had just come through feeling very unhappy about some family dynamics, that I felt like I was a child again. I felt like I wanted to tantrum within every cell of my being, and I couldn't really understand what was going on. And then I meditated. I just said, what is this? This is very unusual. And then, literally the next day, I was listening to this podcast where they were talking about life being like a spiral, and where we at now with our evolutionary process, if you will. We are like going back to the beginning. So even if it's past lives, even if it's childhood traumas, everything, it's like we being faced with those obstacles again, and it's
Mhm.
not really true, and we must just remember that. We've been given an opportunity to clear that. And
Mhm.
that's really what's happening. And it's so true. It's like stuff from the past. I mean, I had to do massive dental work this week. I can't tell you how much past stuff that brought up for me. So I was woman down and just releasing and processing and just raising our frequency. And I think that is so important. And it's really, I'm actually almost relieved I'm not alone in this, Andy. Thank you for being there with me.
Yeah, you're welcome. I apologize. There's a little construction going on next door. If you guys hear any of the noise in the background, I hope it's not too distracting. Um,
Oh,
but yeah, it is nice to at least know you're not alone. But this brings me to one of the tools that I have used in my path of healing from trauma. You know, along my journey, basically I've had the opportunity to experience and utilize different modalities, different therapies, different practices for trauma, and some of them work and some of them really don't work. And one of the reasons that I love this knowledge that I had the blessing and the honor to really dive very deeply into with some incredible teachers across the planet is because it's one of the most useful tools that I've had in my journey of recovery. And um, so when when I came across these teachings and these practices, first of all, it was very difficult to discover the actual knowledge and where it came from. And so it really led me on a journey around the world. um, but but it was worth it. I think it was really worth it. So the first thing that I like to really explain to people is that as far as the knowledge that comes from the Vedas is where it comes from, and it comes from very 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 ancient India, very
can you
ancient.
explain to us what the Vedas are? If you can maybe just explain to our viewers and just give us a 101 as to what the Vedas are, please.
Yeah, well, that's something that you could spend an entire lifetime diving into, but the
Yeah.
way that I so the way that I received the knowledge and learned the knowledge was according to a very ancient oral tradition and lineage of teachings and knowledge, and called the Shankaracharya tradition, and it traces back all the way to ancient India, um, and that time period. From my understanding, although there is some debate, you know, but it's a civilization that existed approximately 20,000 to 50,000 BC. So this was a very different civilization than the civilization that we live in, and the understanding even is that our awakened state as humanity seems to have been more in alignment with the laws of nature, the basic laws of, God's laws of nature at that time than we are now. Um, But the Vedas, essentially what they are, is the lines of code that underlie all of nature. And yeah, after the reason that I started to delve so deeply into the knowledge, and I just kept studying and learning more and more, is because I have this really interesting science and spirituality, or dual obsession with science and God, my entire life. And when I came across this knowledge, the understanding of quantum physics and quantum mechanics was so so much more advanced than what it is in today's quote unquote modern science. Uh, and the way that, even down to the quantum level, the nature of our reality is explained is identical to what's being quote unquote discovered in modern day quantum physics experiments and things like that. And so that really had my attention.
Yeah.
And so basically, what the Vedas, the mythology or the story of how the Vedic knowledge was received or by humanity, basically, is that the original teacher is referred to as Adhi Yogi, and there were 7 basically students that he had that he kind of delivered the knowledge to. And it's said that they did this by going into a state of very deep meditation, um, where they were able to see and perceive all of the subtle laws of nature. And the first thing that they were sort of given really is this technology of Sanskrit. And the technology of Sanskrit is the actual sound and light codes that underlie all of creation. So quantum physics is a big word. It scares some people, but
Yeah.
really it just means the study of things on a very small scale. So if you break apart an atom, what's inside of an atom? You know, when I was going through school and through the Rockefeller system, we'll just say, we were taught that there were these solid particles, you know, within that were basically inside and made up the nucleus of an atom. But further studies into quantum physics, string theory, which then advanced into something called M theory, have explained that the actual when you break apart an atom, it's not solid, actually. That there are what are sort of explained as strings of energy that vibrate at different frequencies and have different patterns. Um, and so this is what these teachers said. They went into this state of very deep meditation and they observed. It was observation, really, of the patterns and the sounds that correspond with all of the laws of nature. And
Wow.
so essentially what Sanskrit itself is the breakdown of the pure sounds that exist in nature, and those sounds we actually can create in our own body, you know.
Wow. Hang on. That is amazing. So I want to just repeat that. And I think just let that settle in. And for our viewers as well, this is something very important, I think. So what you're saying is Sanskrit is the breakdown of the sounds of nature. Wow.
Yes.
Because I always look at that and I say nature is God in action. Because when you look at how a tree grows from a seed to this massive oak tree, it's how we require the same things, maybe a little bit more complex, but nonetheless. So we take our guidance from nature. And it's the same way that the yogis then in the ancient times would have gone to study yoga outside. They observed nature, animals, sacred geometry, all of these things. And like even when you're looking at the yoga postures, right? They're based on nature, which is amazing. So
Mm-hmm.
I love that. I just
Mm-hmm.
have to say, so Sanskrit is the breakdown of the sounds of nature.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes.
it's a technology, not a language, as you say. That makes perfect sense to me now.
Yeah.
Why it's a technology and not a language? Because everything is sound, frequencies, and vibration. And correct me if I'm wrong, I'm just trying to understand this. Because everything is sounds, frequencies, and vibrations in your body. So when your
Mm-hmm.
body is harmonized with God or source energy, the sounds of nature and the sounds of Sanskrit, which really are interchangeable then, will
Mm-hmm.
harmonize with who you are, and that will offset that frequency into the universe. So you become like a echo almost, right?
Yes, exactly.
Wow.
Yes. Yes. You've said so many things that I want to break down even more, but absolutely. The the process of understanding this knowledge is the technology of the knowledge is you start to see that our even our physical bodies were designed as a resonance chamber, and that when you make these sounds that correspond to the most sort of pure, subtle, just pure laws of nature, um, it actually, you can rewire the nervous system. So it's very powerful. Not only that, but like I was saying, the Sanskrit corresponds to these subtle sounds and patterns that you find in nature. So the laws of nature are God's laws. There's cosmic law that it doesn't matter what you believe. It just one thing. The way that our universe and cosmos are currently designed in this universe that we are currently inhabiting in physical form, there are patterns and laws of nature established. So um, just like the when you bring it down to the basics of the elements of fire, water, earth, and air, and then the fifth element, which is understood to be God's consciousness that flows through all of it, is actually the fifth element. Um,
Isn't that
that
ether? Would that not be ether?
yeah, yeah,
So,
that
yeah.
there is a spark of divinity. God has his fingerprints on everything, and that these laws of nature actually operate under a, in a specific mathematical pattern, and you can see things that are repeated. And not only that, but you can hear and measure the actual sound and light frequency and pattern that underlies different things that we see in the material world. So
Can I just also say what's sorry, just on that note, and I'm sorry to interrupt you. One of our viewers is saying that that is what DMT users see, which is obviously the plant medicine, when they take the three deep hits, lines of code on everything. So that is, again, I think it's just it's such beautiful
yeah,
confirmation saying,
it's
right? So,
very okay. So I'm going to go on that for a second because I love this audience because people are so awake. Um,
yes.
so first of all, so if you think of everything in nature, everything, even down to water, down to plants, different fabrics, even different emotional states, okay, have a specific pattern that equals that thing. So everything is sound and light vibrating in patterns, right? So if you look and listen to water, for example, on the most subtle level, there's a pattern of light and sound that corresponds to water. Okay. The word in Sanskrit replicates that pattern. So the word
Wow.
is, yeah. So it's not a label of the thing. It's the
Vibration.
vibration and the actual pattern. So if the whole universe is sound and light, you can think of it like a cosmic symphony, right? And there's each little thing has its musical pattern, musical sound that goes with it. And when we are able to, so what the yogis or what the ancient teachers and students basically saw by observation from this very connected state of being in the heart, the real center from the ancient teachings, not only the Vedic teachings but the Cherokee teachings, talk about the actual brain, quote unquote, that's connected to divine and to the one creator of all of the universes. That intelligence actually resides in the heart center. We've confused the brain, which is kind of like the computer that labels and judges, with the actual intelligence of the heart. And so it's from this sort of connected where it's explained the way that the Vedas, when you actually try to read the Vedas, no. First of all, I'd like to explain it like looking at the lines of code. It operates very much like binary code. So binary code are the ones and the zeros that make up everything that you see on your computer as software or as a picture or a video. So the actual data of the ones and zeros is the binary code that equals what we see on the screen. Okay. If I were to, as just a layman, go and look at a line of code that is literally creating this podcast, it would not mean anything to me at all. The Vedas are kind of like that. It's like the lines of code that underlie nature, really. And then the sciences that come out of that are like the software that allows you to understand it and see how it sort of functions. But the first piece of the puzzle that the whole thing is based on is Sanskrit, which is an actual technology. Okay, and there are two sort of main rules about how Sanskrit works. One is that the meaning and the feeling are the same. This is very different from our Western learning also.
Yes,
So
so you got to, it's integrity, right? Wouldn't that be then speaking or expressing yourself with integrity? Because if you've got the meaning and the feeling both the same, you're expressing from a true place. Would you
yeah,
agree with that? Wow.
yes, it sort of is a result of it. So the way the language works is in accordance with the meaning. So, and the really incredible thing that, remember, our bodies really are kind of like our sound resonance chamber, is that our bodies are constructed in a way that sounds actually live in specific parts of the physical body that
Yes.
echo all of these basic sounds, that are like the sonic building blocks of life and nature. So we can align ourselves with a song. Really, that's what we're doing vibrationally, and what we're constantly putting out some sort of vibration. Either it's fear, we're singing the
Yes.
song of fear through our life, through our experience, through our words, through our heart, through everything, or we are aligning ourselves with our free will to say a different song of compassion or patience or integrity or truth. but those sounds actually have a science to them. And the best way I can explain, so the whole language is like this, that when you start to learn how to pronounce the sounds, the meaning is evident. So it's completely
Okay.
backward. Okay.
You'll
So
get the sound, you'll get the sound right if you feel the meaning first.
they're the same thing. So here's the
Yes.
first thing that I'll explain. So there there's two vowels in Sanskrit. There's a short A that's pronounced Make that sound in your body. Uh.
Uh,
Go ahead and do that.
uh,
Uh.
uh.
In order to make that sound, it requires constriction.
Yeah.
It requires your body to constrict. And it's right here. It's right here. It's It's like in the stomach, and it's a constriction. The
Yeah.
meaning of when you hear the A with no line on top, it's the which is the short A. And when put in the beginning of a word, it means no, it means lack, it means not. So you can feel it means constriction, lack of, versus the long A in Sanskrit is pronounced ah. Make that sound.
Wow, look at that.
Okay.
Amazing.
Means fullness. It means
Yes,
fullness. And
absolutely.
when you're in a state of fullness and like, you actually naturally make that sound. And you
Wow.
know, so that's how the whole language is, that you can't. So the way that traditionally, again, I learned very traditional ways, very ancient traditional ways that are completely backwards from the way we're taught in the West. And it's very hard to find things taught this way anymore, even across the globe. I literally, it's hard. Even in India, it's hard right now.
Wow.
Um, but traditionally, Sanskrit was taught to very, young children. Um, and they weren't given the meaning of the words until they were 16 or 17 or 18 years old. They were just taught the pure sounds. And, you know, from that basically alignment with or harmonizing with the laws of nature and God, and they were the quote unquote definitions that came from their mind. It's like being hardwired with the laws of nature rather than the boxes that we put ourselves into. The explanations that these kids would, or the monks, if they would start their study at like 5 years old, and they were taught just these pure sounds. When my teacher, who has a PhD in Sanskrit, went over to India, she had a grant to go study with a traditional teacher. And she spent her first 6 months chanting the Sanskrit alphabet 8 hours a day
Wow.
because of this, like just making those sounds. It's not an idea about something that, it's like, it literally corresponds to the physical vessel, the physical body,
Yeah.
and then in the certain patterns. So then you, not only the sound, but the breath also corresponds to our actual nervous system. So there is a hardwired automatic response between emotions and breath. Okay. So it doesn't matter. You don't have to think about it to do it. It's automatic. It's an automatic response. If you're in a state of anger, there's an actual pattern of breath that corresponds to that emotional state. If you're in a state of fear, there's a pattern of breath that corresponds subconsciously. So
Absolutely.
by observing these patterns, so for example, Sanskrit would take it to the actual sound. So say you're in a state of fear and there's a pattern of breath that's creating anxiety. There are actual patterns of breath that equal stillness and it's, the nervous system being in alignment. And so you can sort of hack or trick your own nervous system backwards by
Wow.
forcing the pattern of breath that equals, let's say, the nervous system being in a calm, centered state. You make that pattern of breath and it brings about the emotional state. Do you see what I'm saying? Where we're usually
Absolutely.
going subconsciously, our breath is reacting to our emotional state. We can start to say, no, I actually don't. I'm going to rewire the nervous system to vibrate and sing a more harmonious song in coordination with everything. And so it literally is a practice that is repeatable and that's experienceable. So like I just explained to you, that ah versus ah, and then the ooh, now you make the ooh sound. Ooh. That
Ooh.
sound lives right here in the heart.
Yeah, heart. That's a heart sound, definitely. It's warm.
Okay. And then
Ooh.
so there's another sound, and that ah sound, if you start with a deep the it really does live down here. Remember, we had to make we had to constrict in this area of the body to make that sound The also lives down here, kind of in the stomach area. It connects and it coordinates with the lumbar spine. So when you're making that sound, it's literally resonating that part of the physical body. And then the ooh sound is resonating the thoracic, it's resonating with the thoracic spine. And someone brought up DMT. So DMT is a naturally occurring, actually chemical neurotransmitter. It's natural in our body. It's released in our body. And the the thing is that it's not very much in our modern society because everything that allows for that has been shut down purposefully. Fluoride plays a piece. So there is a gland in our brain that's located in the center of the brain. If you look down it, it's like in the center of the cross of our brain. And it's called the pineal gland. And this gland was very important in ancient times. And today, if you even talk to modern day doctors, they hardly know, they claim to not really even know what it does or what it is. There's just so, however, if you take a cross section of the human brain, the part of the brain that is the resonance chamber that is connected to the pineal gland is shaped like the eye of Horus. It's that actual shape. That's what our anatomy is shaped like. Okay. So, and the pineal gland, which is represented many times as a pine cone, from the Vedic teachings, and also the native, I've done a lot of study with the Cherokee teachings and the Hopi teachings. They say the same thing, that this pineal gland that's in the center of the brain, when it starts to not be so stiff, and people could say it's calcified, meaning it's just sort of stiff and not functioning and not flowing. when it starts to operate in its normal, more natural state, this allows for actual release in the physical body of neurotransmitters such as oxytocin, endorphins, DMT. When this gland is operational, it releases this natural occurring chemical called DMT that allows for, let's say, receptivity, or it's almost like turning here's how I explain it, how God has taught me to work with all of this. Our body is like a resonance chamber. It's almost like an antenna. Sometimes people allow something else to come into their resonance chamber and take up residence, which I never recommend any sort of channeling or allowing any other entity, being, anything into your space. That's your sovereign vessel that God created for you and your soul and your body and your mind and your spirit. Nothing else enters that space. And in my experience, if it's an angelic, or if it's, if it's the voice of God, that will never be tried to be forced upon you. And so I picture it's like we're our sovereign child of God vessel. But then when you are able to sort of quiet down the system, or that computer of the mind that's constantly generating fear, it's like you sort of become like an antenna. So I picture it almost like these little antennas that you can then receive and communicate more clearly from other beings. But that allows for that awareness, and it allows for also, when the pineal is starts to become more decalcified, meaning back to its original way of sort of opening and closing, and more like a flower, you are able to perceive those things that are maybe beyond just the five senses, or beyond just the fight or flight reactive part of the mind. And it also allows, when these sort of three centers of the nervous system, the lumbar, the thoracic, and then the cervical spine, when they're all flowing together in a way, rather than a lot of people, they'll get stuck in their fear and then try to spiritual bypass, or they won't want to go into the heart because it's too painful. But when the whole system is working as one unit, it literally creates almost like a field, an electromagnetic field in the heart. It's
Yeah.
like a torus field. It
Yeah.
literally creates like a pumping mechanism in the heart center. And so it's you become then even maybe more of a fine-tuned generator of a certain vibration. That's the best way I can explain it. But
Yeah, it's amazing. Beautifully explained, really. Sounds
and
incredible.
one thing that I want to give to people as a tool. So here's the other thing, that it's so difficult with this, just like with when you're teaching. I've been so grateful to receive so many teachings about the Bible and things, and the actual legality of it, and the spiritual warfare nature of it, and the weapon that we have in those words, the word of God. That Sorry, I lost my train of thought. But when you have powerful knowledge like that, that's effective and that works, there's a lot of twisting of it, or utilizing, or infiltrating. And so a lot of the Eastern teachings really have been very infiltrated. Why? Because if you understand the power of even getting people on a certain emotional in a certain emotional state just by the music that you put into the environment. You can, the beats in the music correspond, I promise you, to certain states of emotion. And it's a subconscious, it's
Yes,
creates that in the environment, in the people, in their body and their mind. Then they're repeating that, and they're putting that into their own system. And so it's the technology of how sound and light work together is, it's powerful knowledge. And for thousands of years now, it's been kept in the hands of people that know how to use it and use it as a weapon, you know?
exactly. Again, this is just highlighting how they will take, we again understand that God is the creator. Only God can create. Only the creator can create. The Lucies, as I call them, they can only emulate. They can't create. So what they do is they take what's already there and they stuff it up.
Mm-hmm.
Every frequency in its own uniqueness or its own independence, if you will, is perfect and pure. There is not one frequency, sound, resonance, nothing that is
Mm-hmm.
evil. But what man does to the frequencies, you see, so it's taking
Exactly.
and concocting it and turning it into all sorts of dodgy things. So it's not the frequency, or the language. This is such a pure, beautiful, amazing, incredible sound. I'm going to call it a sound. A technology. I'm still getting used to that. I'll get there, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But just what it is, and to be able to understand how, when we align with this, we really do align with God's work in its
Mm-hmm.
purest form. I mean, I love
Yeah,
this.
it's a symphony. The
Hmm,
whole creation is a symphony. And okay, so another thing. So these people, they know these things and they know how to mess with it. They try to mess with the God's laws of nature and God's laws of everything. So if you think of it, they're trying to hack the system in many ways and sort of reverse engineer God's laws, God's work, God's
yeah.
divine
Yeah.
cosmos. But so you can think of how they do it. If you have sort of the codes that underlie states, all of it. So even let's talk about the four basic elements that you learn about in all of the ancient traditions. Fire has a certain pattern to it. It has a way of being. It has a way of being. So does water, so does air, and so does earth. And those are sort of the sort of elements that you combine those things to make other things, how it's explained. So fire in and of itself is not evil, but if they, for example, will say they learn sort of the nature of fire and how it works, and then use that only, or
Mm-hmm.
either heighten it or make it really big or add
Yeah.
gasoline, but
Mm.
then they don't use it in the way that it was even designed. That's kind of how you see. So it's like they get the codes of all these different things, and then they want to make the natural processes. In nature, we go through cycles. Something's created, it's maintained for a while, and then it dissolves so the next thing can be created. There is a dissolution part of the cycle that's natural, which you might call, um you might call destructive, but it has its role in nature. Like the natural cycles, fire is supposed to come through the forest once a year to clean out all of the dead brush, and then that transforms into fertile soil for the forest. But so it's like the fire, the quote unquote disaster of that forest fire, is actually a natural part of the cycle. But these people have, it's like they find the code to that part and they want to make it bigger, and then they want everyone just to get on the disaster frequency or something.
Yeah.
That's kind
Yeah.
of what I've seen how they've done it. They'll take a piece and try to mix this piece with this piece, but they don't
Yes.
really go together. And then they'll try to trick you into believing it. But the laws of nature are the laws of nature. You cannot light a piece of wood on fire with water. I don't care how many times you say, well, I believe that I can and it's my truth. No, it doesn't work that way. There are actual things that were designed by God. Like you can't just
Humanity, isn't it wonderful though? I'm sorry just to interrupt you, but I always chuckle at this because, as you say, well, it's my truth. It can, as you say, there are irrefutable laws of nature. And, working in harmony with the laws of nature are going to get us exactly where we need to be and the best results, right? But of course, human beings, of course, in our human state, we have to go against the laws of nature, right? So that's just our thing, to go against the laws of nature. So this is
yeah.
what happens when we go against the laws of nature. We end up in a merry F up all over the world, and now we've got to like try and unbum ourselves.
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, really, and so what so these these things can be seen and experienced directly, and they can be replicated in the physical body. So, the Sanskrit language, for example, there's no word for religion in Sanskrit actually.
Wow.
It's
Wow.
just it's just like the observation of like, oh, we see water flows this way and it seems to, it's, and oh, here's the sound, duh, 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 that equals this, and duh, 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 that equals that. It really is like the binary code. um and that's why in even the quote unquote separate gods and goddesses, it's really a misnomer that it's a polytheistic society. It was not at all. um it was a one creator um worldview. And
Absolutely.
the quote unquote separate gods and goddesses, if you really go and start to figure out what they actually are, here's what it is. Okay, so remember, all the Vedas are these lines of code, like the binary code. And there were these sort of laws of nature that seemed to be very noteworthy or very powerful, or very, just had their own sort of quality. And there is a mantra that corresponds to that law of nature. Okay, there's a mantra that corresponds to compassion, for example. And so, or there's a mantra that corresponds to wisdom. I'll use this one. Wisdom is an actual mantra. Mantra just means, like a
Sound.
sentence in Sanskrit, multiple words together. um there's a sentence from the Vedas that corresponds to what we call wisdom. And the symbol of that law of nature is Ganapati, the elephant. But the symbol is a code for how that law of nature operates. Okay?
Wow. Okay.
It's not a separate god. It's not Ganapati, Ganesha, which is the representation of wisdom,
Yes.
is represented in symbolic form by this elephant. Okay? But it's like there's so many multi levels. If you can understand it on one level, or you can understand it on a completely different level. um
I
Ultimately, it's explained that Ganesha was born from the sun and the moon. And the sun is is representative of what's called sort of divine masculine, which means pure potential energy. It means unlimited. It's like that the spark, like this, how sunlight comes to earth and enlivens, it hits everybody on earth the same way. And
Yeah.
and what you do with it and create with that light that's coming from the sun is a different thing. But the just pure potential energy is what is explained as this. And then the moon is like the actual form connected with the emotional flow of things. And it also represents the heart, or it's symbolic of that, we could say. So the decode for wisdom is connection with God filtered through the heart. You see how, so it's not literally that this elephant was the son of the, was
Yes,
born out of
absolutely.
the sun and the moon. It's like these are these are
Mythology.
these are decodes for the symbol and ultimately for the actual sound and pattern that underlies that actual law of nature.
That is so beautifully explained. It makes such perfect sense. What I'd also like to say, you were just touching on with many gods earlier on. Um, a lot of Western religion absolutely mistakenly, and I say this mistakenly, talk about Eastern philosophies and many gods. It is so wrong. It just shows how the Western, predominantly Christian, I would imagine, religion has misunderstood the East. You see, the way I see it, it's not many gods, it's one God with many faces. So God will show that face, and as you're talking about Ganesha, who's one of the Hindu deities, the elephant, who's my favorite deity, and I love the way you explain Ganesha, which is the element of the sun, which makes up that pure power. So it's that raw, masculine energy combined with that soft, watery, feminine flow, that gives it the shape and the flexibility, and as you say, and expressed through the heart center. And Ganesha is known to be removing obstacles. So when you would then tune in to these codes, right, and
Mm-hmm.
understand, be at peace with your inner being, and you understand when you're working with the deities what it truly means. So it's not many gods, it's one God expressing God's self in many different ways. So each
Yeah,
face of the deity is going to be a representation, as you say, of the entire. I mean, I've never seen it the way that you are. You're talking about the deity has the entire Sanskrit meaning enveloped
mm-hmm.
and encoded in it, which just is that much richer with all the
Mm-hmm.
different layers. So it really
Yeah,
does give the student a lot to chew on, doesn't it? When you're
yeah,
studying art
it's
of Sanskrit.
yeah, and I'll explain even a little bit further on that. So Sanskrit is so specific because remember, like these sounds are so, we have this whole creation that we live in, and there's all these different sounds and lights and patterns and all of it interacting all together. Um, so here's a perfect example. Let's say in English you say the sun, the sun. There's so many different things that could mean. In Sanskrit, it's so specific. So there's a difference in Sanskrit between the light of the sun at dawn versus the light of the sun, the nature of how we experience the light of the sun at noon. There's a difference between the light of the sun at noon in the summer, there's and the winter. And so that's, it's kind of like, so the quote unquote separate deities, it's like, how do you explain the sunset? Yes, it's light from the sun, but it's a whole different expression of that light, or it's a different quality, or it has a different feel to it. That's literally what the quote unquote gods and goddesses are. They are the explanation of that law of nature. and how it operates naturally, how it
I
operates.
absolutely love it because I have been also listening to some of the stuff that you sent me, and it just goes so in line with that because you were talking about the goddesses and things as well. You know, when we're looking at like Kali and Medusa, and especially these, let's just talk about the particularly scary looking ones, you know. And a lot of people say, oh, that's evil. And again, you know, it's misinformation. It really is an expression of nature. These goddesses express themselves, as you say, as nature, and the way you're explaining it now, with the different layers. And as you say, the sun at different times of the year, different times of the day, you know, makes the expression different. It's
Mhm.
amazing. It is so
Yeah,
beautiful. So it
it
really,
really is. And there's been, the thing too is there's been a lot. So it's really interesting. What I've heard people explain, I'm going to be careful with my words. Let's just say the Western version of these teachings that I've come across is not the same. So even when I've heard Christians say this and this and this and this, but then you actually go and study the actual knowledge, or go to India, or go to Bali, or go meet with the Cherokee elders, or go meet with the Hopi elders. It's not at all that like what I was taught that it was in my earlier year. Like, it's just not the same. There's a lot of misunderstanding culturally, through the languages, through time. Um, and and so that gets a little bit tricky too. Like, even so, let's go to the gods and the goddesses. When you actually study the science, that the gods are quote unquote masculine laws of nature. The goddesses are feminine laws of nature. Okay. The and from this in this paradigm, in this system, the masculine laws of nature are explained as like, well, there's different ones, but that's why they create the different symbols. But it's the divine God, masculine, is very just pure loving, a pure vibration of love that is like all possibilities. That's what it is. Okay. And then the feminine is something that takes those possibilities and creates a form out of it.
exactly. Wow.
So it's
I
like, it's not a god and a goddess. It's like, it's just, just like if you have an electrical socket, there's a feminine part of the plug and there's a masculine part of the plug. Okay. It's just how that's explained. One's more receptive and one is more outward. What they are like the quote unquote dual energies, but they're not competing. They're meant to work together. And so even if, for example, um, there's misunderstanding even in the representations, because so Kali, for example, Kali is a quote unquote goddess that people, and she's depicted in a lot of kind of scary ways. So it's a fierce form. It is a fierceness. There's in the mythologies, it's like this age-old battle between God and the demons. And at one point in history, it was explained that all the demons had like all this power, and they created this thing called. And so the response from the angelic kingdom, basically, was to create this other thing and put like all of the most powerful things together to try to defeat the demons.
The
That didn't work.
polarization of it, right? Are you saying so let's say they created this demonic entity, so the angelics then responded by creating um, something completely beautiful, the opposite
No,
thereof.
it was like a it was explained as, so it's explained that we as humanity go through these cycles. They're called yugas, from this And these are like million, 100,000 year cycles of humanity. And at certain points, it's really bright, and then it goes to more dark and more dark and more dark. And then it starts to go back up to more awake. So it's like awake, asleep, awake, asleep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Most
Yeah.
of humanity asleep, and then everything gets really dense and fearful and dark, and then it starts to wake back up.
With you.
And so there was this other period of time where it was really dark, kind of like how we are now. And so it's like the story or the explanation of this law of nature that's that's called a goddess, but it's not literally a goddess, is the intensity that's needed to step forward as a warrior against the forces of darkness. So and that takes a certain intensity and like tenacity, but it's said in the Vedic knowledge that even that didn't work. So so there's this other law of nature that's called Kali, that was the weapon that destroyed the demons. Okay. And
Ah,
it's said to be a very concentrated version of all of the most powerful laws of nature. Okay. And ultimately what it was a specific vibration.
wow.
It's
Yes.
a
Yes.
specific vibration. And a lot of times depicted as like a storm, right? Because it's we as humanity are like that we're so stubborn that it takes like we're like a coconut that we have to have our heads smashed open with a hatchet to actually be able to break free of that. So
Think.
it it can be experienced as like the biggest storms in our life that look like the biggest destruction actually are opening us up to something new, to let go of the old things. So people often say, oh, Kali is like destroyer, but it's really a lot more complex than that. It's more of it. There are certain times, and if you think of the what is a storm in nature, even think of how a very powerful storm, it's all of the most powerful wind, the water comes with the wind, and it's like really strong. So it's like the most powerful forces of nature come together in a certain point that makes it a possible for lightning to strike. Okay. What's lightning? Think of lightning. It's high voltage energy that connects heaven to earth, that has a purifying effect on the environment. It literally purifies the air. Think of the feeling before a storm and all those things come together, and then the lightning comes. After the storm is when the rainbow comes, it's the most pure. So if you can think of people that understand these things, and they focus on Kali, this law of nature that is meant to sort of destroy all of the things that are keeping us held hostage. Sometimes sometimes God needs to come and like rip us out of our marriage, or rip us out of, and it feels like destruction, and it feels like all hope is lost, but really it's like it's that storm that comes so that you can move through those things that used to keep you weighted down, and it brings this energy of heaven to earth. It's almost symbolic of the lightning strike that allows for the old stuff that was, the fear, the sadness, the pain, the
Exactly.
trauma, to be actually sort of purified out in a way. So do you see what I mean? It's like
Absolutely.
all been so twisted.
Totally. It makes beautiful and brilliant sense what you are saying. I'm absolutely loving this. So it's such an unfolding, and it makes such sense, and we are out of time again at the moment.
Okay.
So I am absolutely so grateful to have had you for this talk again this evening. Look forward to next week, Tuesday again.
Me too.
Um, where we're going to continue these discussions. It is so exciting for me. And I think this is so important for the world to realize that, that to reveal these things that, because if you look at religion in the world, I think the biggest religion must be Christianity, right? Which has been so indoctrinated into believing that only that is right and no other way. So have therefore absolutely kept so many of these ancient secrets the sacred knowledge hidden, and literally lied to us as people so that we don't empower ourselves. So I think it's amazing that we can find this time and this place again, Andy, with people
Yeah.
like yourself that have gone to that extent to discover truth. And God bless you for that. And thank you, because it's so amazing what you are doing. And I'm just loving it.
Mm.
Thank you so, so much.
You're
Thank you. Thank
welcome. One thing
Yeah.
I do want to say real quick about that is that as I traveled and studied in India and all over the world, Bali, Thailand, all over other places too, um, but especially in India, because we're talking about this knowledge, they have so much love for Jesus. And they're,
Absolutely.
and I don't know what the deal is. I'm just going to say I met many, many, many people there that there's all sorts of legends and myths about Jesus visiting India during his lifetime. So I'm just wondering if there might be more to that story of the connection between some of the ancient teachings and Jesus in one way or another. I'm not making that claim. I'm just saying I heard a lot. I've a lot of times in India, how much love for Jesus and how like these stories of Jesus and in India. And so I don't know, but I don't know. Maybe
Well,
he some aware of this tech awareness of this technology and teachings as well. I don't know for sure, but the Cherokee teachings are also very similar. So
yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. Well, I definitely, what I read is a lot is the Aquarian Gospel of Jesus the Christ, which is the 18 missing years of Jesus' life in the Bible. So
Mm,
for me, if I was a Christian, I'd say, well, hello, where did he go? And according to what we reading, part of that time was spent in India. As well, he spent time in India. He spent time in Persia, in Greece. I think it is Greece.
mm,
Tibet, India, Tibet, Persia, 6 places. Sorry,
mm,
I've just hit a bit of a blank now. But all of and Egypt, of course, Egypt. So all of these amazing ancient places where he went and taught, and was spent time from everything I'm learning with the monks there, shared knowledge. This is the thing. All of these guys in the ancient essence, we all vibrated on the same level.
mm,
So religion is not a religion is the thing that has divided us. It's coming from the heart. It's understanding how do we live our best experience in these beautiful bodies on this beautiful planet Earth. And how do we get the most out of it? And these are the guys that have lived for many, many lives and many years before us, and they've figured this out. So their knowledge is really what they've passed on to us. It has nothing other to do with that. And the bottom line is, if you live in harmony, if you live in love, and if you live in peace with yourself and your fellow brethren, there is no fear. And that's what the Eastern teachings tell us. They help us to understand how the mind, the body, the spirit, the emotions work. So they give us these deities and these symbols and things so that we can understand it in bite-sized chunks. So that's the
mm.
way I see it, and I just think it's so amazing that you're able to bring us this knowledge, Andy. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Is there anything else you
Um,
would like to maybe just say in closing?
um, no, I look forward to yeah, I just love it because um well, okay, I want to give one more thing. I do. There's part of the Sanskrit language that is really important that corresponds to the pineal gland. And it's a sound that you can make that sounds like a buzzing of a bee in your head. It's a very sacred sound in Sanskrit. It's the M with the dot over it, and it sounds like and it's this buzzing noise right here that literally has the effect to start to help to naturally decalcify. It's not like nothing in my experience that the way it was laid out for us to naturally grow. It's not a quick bypass. But I did notice like you can even start to make that sound even for like 30 seconds and you'll start to feel, oh my gosh, there are actual effects. So
isn't that called brahmacharya or something? Isn't that
it's called
brahmacharya?
anusvara. It's called anusvara.
Okay, I've done it before. In fact, it is the most amazing meditation. I would do that with some of my students, just doing the buzzing, the bee buzzing. We'd call it like, but I couldn't remember the Sanskrit name. But wow, that is so true. That is amazing to decalcify the pineal gland.
Yeah. So that's something that you know you can start to do just in little chunks. If you want to sit, listen to music even is fine. And you can do just like even 30 seconds and you'll notice immediately that's why these technologies are not beliefs. You don't have to believe me. You should, it's these practices are meant for you to develop your own direct connection to God and grace and your heart center. It doesn't come from me. I'm just explaining what worked for me and what didn't work. But when you can even sit for like 30 seconds of just deep breath and then you'll notice that the sound, it might start in the nose here, but then when it starts to come up here, when you really have the experience of it, it sounds almost like a singing bowl. It has this like kind of sound to it. But that for me has been very effective for treating anxiety. So, it's much better than a Xanax. We'll just put it much better than like than some sort of pharmaceutical. And I'll just say that these sounds are part of how I was able to start to heal from trauma. So I'm sharing that experience. Wow. Yeah.
We know sound is obviously, the universe was created from sound. We know that. So we understand that it is probably the most healing vibration that we could possibly tune into. Thank you. Jan Skaggs, thank you so much. You're such a sweetheart. Appreciate you so much for buying us the latte. Love you for that, Jan. Thank you so much. Wonderful to see you, and really asking for you back. We're having ANDI back. We plan to have her back every week on a Tuesday. We might vary the time because I have someone else on an alternative Tuesday, so we make it earlier and later, but we will let you guys know. But Andy's regular slot with Aquarius, Solutions with Aquarius Rising Africa is on a Tuesday. Evening for me, morning for you guys, but wow. So grateful for this beautiful woman. Wow, guys. Every now and again, I got to tell you out there, I know that I strike gold. This lady, she's gold. I want to say share these recordings, these videos that we do, because this is such important information for people to get out. Jan's, sorry, not Jan. Do you see Jan? Yeah, you're right in front of my face. Thank you so much. Andy is going to be definitely talking more about her Sanskrit stuff in the future. She does workshops. She does amazing stuff I'm very excited
Mm.
for you guys on this channel to be receiving that intel. It is very, very amazing and very beautiful. And thank you to each and every one of you for watching us again on this beautiful Tuesday. If you haven't already, please give us a like, a share, and a subscribe on our Solutions channel. Find us on Facebook, BitChute, Twitter, Odyssey, Telegram. We're all over. And yeah, God bless you all. Mwah. Take good care of yourselves, and we shall see you back